Hello, my name is Judge Robert Parrott. I'm the Marysville Municipal Court Judge. I'm also president of the Union County Historical Society. Union County has had several individuals who have made their mark nationwide. I'm going to tell you about one of those individuals today. It's probably a person you haven't heard of. It's Judge Kathryn Sellers. Kathryn Sellers was born here in Union County in 1870. She attended Marysville High School, but she stopped at the age of 15 because she was a very bright student, very intelligent, and Watkins asked her if she would become the teacher at the Watkins School. So at age 15, she became a teacher at one of the township schools. She taught school for 2 years and returned back to Marysville. She graduated from Marysville High School in 1889. Kathryn was always a very outgoing person. She was a natural leader. She wanted to make a mark in her life, but at that particular time, it was very hard for women to find some sort of occupation that was anything except routine. So she set out on her own and went to Washington. The first job that she obtained was with the United States Department of Agriculture. That provided her support, but it really didn't give her a job that was very challenging. It was a low-paying job. It was the typical job that a woman could get at that period of time. Kathryn met a young politician that she really liked, and she asked that young politician, she said, "Do you know of any position that might be available that might be a little bit more challenging for me?" He said, "I do know of a job. There's a job that just opened up in the U.S. Weather Bureau." He said, "But the position is very competitive. A lot of people will apply for that job." He said, "You've got to take 3 civil service exams, and the exams aren't easy. They're going to hire whoever gets the highest grades on those 3 examinations." He said, "The other thing is a woman has never held that position, so don't be surprised if they turn you down." Kathryn was undaunted. She went for that position. She took the 3 examinations. She not only did well, she tested the highest that they've ever had on all 3 of the examinations. And even though she was a woman, they hired her immediately as an employee of the U.S. Weather Bureau. That young politician who recommended her for that job was Teddy Roosevelt. She worked at the U.S. Weather Bureau from 1891 to 1900, and in that position she started to be recognized among the Washington, D.C. community. She was known as a woman of talent, a woman of ability, and it wasn't long until she was hired away. In 1900, the U.S. State Department hired her to come work at the State Department. They had a problem, and they told Kathryn, they said, "We have one of the largest collections of international law material anywhere on earth, but we can't use it. It's so disorganized. We have books, we have magazines, we have materials, we have papers." They said, "Do you think you can somehow organize this and categorize it for us so that it would make some sense and could be useful?" Kathryn said, "I can do that." So she started working for the U.S. State Department in 1900. Kathryn just rolled up her sleeves and got to work. She worked evenings, she worked weekends. She thought that she didn't have enough training to do the job, so she also put herself through college. That was an unusual thing for a woman at that time, but that was what Kathryn would do. Pretty soon she had that whole collection completely organized, and in doing that she became an expert on international law. There probably wasn't anyone who knew more about international law than Kathryn Sellers. She began publishing journals. She also wrote articles, and once again she became recognized across the country as a leader in her field. She earned the attention of the Carnegie Endowment Foundation, and they hired her away from the U.S. State Department, and she began working for the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace because she had so much knowledge on international law. She did very well at that, but because there were so many questions on law, Kathryn Sellers, as she always did, said, "I need more training." She put herself through law school. Again, a very unusual thing for a woman back in those days. She graduated from law school in 1913. She, after that, got her master's degree in law. Scholastic Scholastically, she was the top of her class, and she did so well that when she graduated, the College of Law asked if she would remain as a law school professor. So she began in 1914 as a law school professor in Washington, D.C. She went around the country speaking on different topics, including such things as criminal procedure and civil procedure. She was just a very knowledgeable individual. But there was something else that she did during this whole time that she was in Washington, D.C. that I want to tell you about. She also was a strong advocate for a woman's right to vote. At that time, women could not vote in the United States. She was an officer in the Equal Franchise League, also president of the Equal Suffrage League. And they advocated for the right of women to vote by amending the United States Constitution. They put pressure on the various elected officials, including the President of the United States. At that time, it was Woodrow Wilson. He was personally opposed to women having the right to vote, but they put such pressure, and their groups were so strong that it was recommended that something needed to be done to try to appease these groups. One of Woodrow Wilson's advisors said, "Why don't you name a woman to the federal court bench with the next position that comes available?" Wilson didn't think much of that idea, but because of all this pressure, he decided he would go ahead and do that. So in 1918, when a position came up for a federal U.S. Judgeship, he said, "I'm going to appoint a woman." And there really was only one woman at that time that was so well recognized in the legal community, and that was Marysville native Kathryn Sellers. He nominated her to the Senate to be a United States federal judge. He didn't think there was much chance that the Senate would confirm that nomination because she was a woman, and so the Senate debated that issue. The Senate actually did approve her nomination, and on October 15th, 1918, she became the first woman to hold the position of United States federal court judge. She would hold that position until February 17th, 1934. So she was reappointed by Harding, reappointed by Coolidge, reappointed by Hoover, and reappointed by Franklin Roosevelt. That's how highly respected she was. Kathryn knew that some of the senators had approved her nomination, not because they wanted her to be judge, but because they knew that she would fail because she was a woman. And she wanted to disprove that and prove that a woman could hold that position. So again, she rolled up her sleeves and went to work, and that's why she was highly respected as a jurist in Washington, D.C. and on the federal court bench. The odd thing, though, is even though she could make decisions in the court, she couldn't vote. It seems so strange that someone who could make all kinds of wise decisions on the bench wouldn't be able to cast a vote. And she continued to advocate for the right to women to vote. In May of 1919, the House of Representatives passed a resolution to amend the United States Constitution to allow women to vote. That passed 304 to 89. Then it went to the United States Senate in June of 1919. They also passed what was then being called the 19th Amendment to the United States Constitution. But even though it was passed by the Senate, it had to be ratified by 3/4 of the states in order to become law. It's interesting to know that Ohio, just 6 days after the Senate passed the 19th Amendment and sent it out to the states, 6 days later, Ohio ratified the 19th Amendment. So by March 1920, 35 states had approved and ratified the amendment. That was one state short of the 3/4 that was needed. The southern states had voted it down. It came down to one state, and that was the state of Tennessee. So if Tennessee passed it, women would have the right to vote. If Tennessee did not pass it, women would still no longer have the right to vote. Tennessee voted 48 to 48, a tie. When they re-voted, 23-year-old Representative Harry Byrne, who was personally against the right of women to vote, changed his vote because his mother sent him a letter and said, please, please, please vote for the right for women to vote. Harry Byrne said, I don't like it, but I will never go against my mother, and he changed his vote. By that one vote, women obtained the right to vote in the United States. The 19th Amendment was ratified. On August 26, 1920, the 19th Amendment was certified and became law. In November of 1920 was the first election where women could vote. That's the election of Warren Harding. In that election, 8 million women cast their vote for the first time. Those who had brought that about were celebrated, including Judge Kathryn Sellers, for her hard work in trying to get that amendment passed. We can be very proud of Kathryn Sellers for the work that she did. She died in 1939, and they had a large funeral in Washington, D.C. As I said, she was very well respected. Then her body was brought back to Marysville, where they had a second funeral here. She's buried out at Oakdale Cemetery here in Marysville. A lot of people don't know that. Her grave says Kathryn Sellers, 1870 to 1939, and on her tombstone it says, first woman judge of a United States court. So the very first woman to hold a federal judgeship is Judge Kathryn Sellers from Marysville, Ohio, a lady who also helped to give women the right to vote. We can be proud of her. There are many other stories and many other individuals that we can talk about that have come from our county who've made a mark in this nation and in our country's development. If you want to come to the Union County Historical Society, we'll be glad to tell you more about them and some of the history of this county. The museum is located at 246 West 6th Street, Marysville, Ohio, right next to the courthouse. Please come and see us, and I'm glad to have the opportunity to tell you about a lady that I really respect, Judge Kathryn Sellers.